Okay, guys, we're going to get started. We have a piece of legislation, emergency bill that actually was just had to suspend the rules yesterday to introduce the bill on the floor, but we have it in front of us, Senate Bill 1187. And we're going to have our two good friends, Senators Simonaire and Salling, to present the bill, and then we'll take questions. Okay, so Senator Simonaire is the sponsor. You're both sponsors. Proceed and take the time you need. Okay.
Thank you. And Chair Feldman, I want to thank you and the committee for the courtesy of letting us have a hearing this late in session. I know you came in early for this, so again, I appreciate it. Senate Bill 1187 is the state of emergency key bridge alterations legislation, or as I call it, the Rebuilding Act of 2024. So basically, I'll cut to the chase. State of emergencies were never meant for long-term projects. They were short in duration, and this bill will provide a solution to that. And if you take anything away from this hearing today, it would be this. It is absolutely essential that we don't leave Annapolis until we have an expedited and prudent process in place that ensures the key bridge can be rebuilt in a timely and safe manner while also protecting the rights of Maryland citizens. In the way of background, I'm going to answer a couple key questions about state of emergencies and why this legislation is needed. First, what and why is a state of emergency needed? During a crisis, a state of emergency is declared by the governor to receive additional resources and temporary authority to address the immediate crisis. An executive order or proclamation is issued detailing the need for the emergency as outlined in law. This allows resources for search and rescue and a host of other actions to take place. Second question, how did the General Assembly design the state of emergency to work? Make no mistake, state of emergencies were designed to reluctantly, but justifiably transfer unparalleled power to the governor's office. They were anticipated to be short in duration, 30-day increments, which they can renew if they need to. Long-term projects that can take years were not anticipated in the creation and continual renewal of state of emergencies. So currently, either the governor would have to stay in a state of emergency with all the broad powers renewed month after month, year after year for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, or just not have an expedited process for the key bridge reconstruction. This bill provides the mechanism to handle that, as I will explain later. The General Assembly is also a passive participant in this process. They receive notices. The General Assembly also retains oversight, and they can terminate a state of emergency, which would be an extreme action and would likely be very political and not recommended in normal situations. The third question, what powers come with state of emergencies? The granting of broad and unfettered powers include the power to usurp any law, rule, or regulation, can place restrictions on citizens' movements and dwellings, can temporarily confiscate personal property for government use, allows for shortcuts in spending state funding, basically a blank check. Fourth question, understanding the need for short-term state of emergencies, what are the dangers for long-term state of emergencies? The broad scope of powers are not needed nor warranted for long-term issues associated with an emergency, such as reconstruction of the key bridge. With a long-term project, the state needs a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Extraordinary times require extraordinary measures, but these powers should not be granted indefinitely, as they give the governor's office the ability to supersede citizens' rights. And then last question, so how does this bill address the scenario of having a long-term impact from an emergency? As we have seen in similar projects, such as another truss-structured bridge accident in Florida, it took 7 years to build that bridge back. Marylanders and our economy cannot wait 7 years. Therefore, this bill retains the short-term state of emergencies during the initial phase of the crisis, but at the same time minimizes the need for long-term state emergencies with their unnecessary broad and far-reaching powers. Rather, it establishes a new limited long-term and expedited process to handle the restoration of a critical infrastructure that a full-blown state of emergency was never intended to do when the law was created. For example, the bill gives the governor the ability to expedite a process where it makes sense only for a critical infrastructure project. One example, if a procurement is needed immediately, the process can be fast-tracked. If there's a 6-month public notification process for some task, the department could make it more reasonable and expedite the timeline. If there was a common sense waiver needed, they could expedite that process, again, saving time. There are probably many other examples. We just don't know all of them at this time, which leads me to the second advantage. This critical infrastructure process is only activated after an associated state of emergency has met its short-term objectives and is terminated. This expedited process must be also directly related to the crisis of a recent state of emergency and cannot be used for just any infrastructure project. The post-state of emergency mechanism, as I call it, allows the governor to use focused and limited authority on a yearly renewal basis instead of every 30 days, and this will also help streamline the overall process. Lastly, it clarifies granting authorities associated with a short-term state of emergency were never meant to be open-ended, but only during the actual state of emergency. And just to give us some perspective, here are some impacts of not quickly addressing the reconstruction of the Key Bridge. The economic challenge for our state to attract new businesses in the Northeast Corridor is going to be daunting while the bridge is out. The devastating potential of existing businesses in that area relocating to other states is real if it takes too long. There will be years of commuter and commercial congestion. Small businesses on both sides of the bridge stand to lose volumes of customers and potentially their business as they depend on through traffic for their business model. And to summarize, this bill creates an expedited post-state emergency mechanism for long-term infrastructure issues. It removes the need to have a continual state of emergencies for years with unbounded powers, and it clarifies that short-term powers are during, not anytime after, a state of emergency. So in conclusion, failure to act is not an option. We face incredible challenges, so we must enact a common sense, expedited process to rebuild the Key Bridge while simultaneously protecting our citizens' rights. And I would ask for your favorable and quick consideration on Senate Bill 1187. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Salling, you want to weigh in here?
Yes, sir. I want to thank the chair and Madam Vice Chair and committee for this opportunity. As you know, the Port of Baltimore and the area and the water that we have is deep port. We have something that everybody else wished they had. And we've had the greater opportunity to do more for the Delmarva area, but reaching out through all the nation of this country. We have this and we want to continue to have this. But only way we can continue to have this is being in a speedy and in a way that we can remedy this quickly, but safely. In a safe manner that the work that is being done now and the future work is done in a safe manner. Going through the federal and the state guidelines of OSHA, MOSHA, and every part, and working with our workers that we do have here. We have the skilled labor to do the work. But if we don't move in a good and a rapid manner, we could lose a lot. We could lose a lot to our neighbors that are our competitors. They want to take that away from us. Now, I love competition. One thing I don't like is somebody to take away something because of a loss. We lost a great thing in the Key Bridge, but now we have great opportunity to learn by this. Now we're going to learn by this by working together. Working together, not just as our constituents are concerned about this, but as a legislation. We have the power to work with a great governor that has a great heart in this. We can work with our federal partners in doing things that we've never done before. So I want to work not with our federal partners, a lot with our local partners, but I want to work with you. And this bill, and I appreciate the good Senator Simon here bringing this, but we have an opportunity to do something great here, that we can work together and show Washington, D.C., show this country that Maryland is different. And that's why we are different. We work together. Mr. Chair, I thank you for this opportunity, and I know we can do this bill together. We can all complement each other by being amended to it and showing the strength that we have. We will make a difference through this, and I want to thank you for this time. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just add, I forgot
Absolutely, yes.
one important thing. I
Sure.
gave you the laundry list of powers that are available. What this bill would do is only take one of those enumerated powers, which is to suspend the effect of any statute, rule, or regulation in the agencies. And that would be the only power we would have going forward, specifically focused on a critical area infrastructure related to an emergency. And that has the oversight of the AELR committee. So it's not a blank check in that sense. So that's what that bill says.
Okay, let's open up questions. We'll start with Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Simon Aaron, Senator Sally, thank you for this bill. I wanted to follow up. You focused on this legislation would help expedite the construction through a longer process. I just wanted to better understand, especially the last point that you just shared with us, how you believe it really will expedite, because we all know that there's general agreement that the sooner we can recover and rebuild, the better for not only the immediate area, the entire state of Maryland, and the country.
Yeah, so in government, some people call it red tape, whatever. There are delays in the process for one reason or another. The way this bill is, it takes one of the powers that we have in the short term to suspend laws, rules, and regulations when it makes sense, and we can shorten the timeline, whether it's, like I said, a notification process, a procurement process, anything like that. This would allow them and give them the authority to shorten the timeline doing that. And why I'm comfortable with it is in the short term state of emergency, but it also has the oversight of our Senate and House committees. So that's why I'm comfortable with that. But the thing is, we could go and we could put a piece of legislation in today and say, we're going to help expedite permits. We're going to help expedite this and this, but we just don't know what all those unknowns are. And so you need something that's flexible, that we don't have to wait 9 more months to come back and try to do that. Now, we certainly can come back 9 months and change the law if we want. But this gives you the flexibility to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you for this legislation. My question is, have you shared this concept with either MACO, MML, or the AG's office? Well, I certainly understand the urgency of the moment. I always get concerned about potential unintended consequences of legislation that could be used at another point in time for other reasons.
Yes, I've shared it with leadership. I didn't have a chance. We just got this back yesterday
Sure.
with MACO. And the other thing is, again, this is a subset of what powers we were already giving. So what we're basically doing is pulling back a lot of the powers in the short term and just keeping some of them for the long term, because you don't need all those extra powers to take property from personal property from people and other things like this. What we're doing is laser focused on what you need for critical infrastructure. And again, we crafted it very tightly that you couldn't use it for the interconnect or something. It has to be related to a state of emergency crisis. And then we'll do that. So I've ran it by some legal counsel and didn't have any problem with that. Again, it's a subset, so it's not breaking ground on new authority. It's just limiting and expanding, and what if you make sense with that, limiting the powers, expanding the time.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions. So we've got Senator Hester.
Thank you, and congratulations on producing a bill in less than 24 hours. I just had a couple of questions. You said you shared it with leadership. That's leadership in the Senate and the House. Does that include the second floor?
I haven't got it to the House yet. It's been a whirlwind. I've been up since 3 a.m. trying to put this all together. I have shared it with the Senate leadership. I've shared it with the governors, and I plan to share it with the House. I've been working with some delegates who are hopefully going to cross-file it.
Okay, did the governor's office? I mean, there's no testimony yet, like.
Yeah,
how
they
did-
said
what
they
did they say?
saw it. They're not weighing in.
Okay,
Because it's a subset of the powers they already have.
exactly.
If I could, I did reach out. I talked directly to the governor yesterday when we were at the Key Bridge. And I was kind of specific about the bill. And he said he wanted to work with us. That's his exact words.
Fabulous. And just one follow-up, if I might, Chair. In terms of, how the state emergency works with the federal kind of emergency, does this in any way impact our ability to draw down federal funds?
No, the governor, even with this legislation, could continue to have a state of emergency for 7 years. There's nothing prohibiting it. This is saying when you terminate that and you want to go into a critical infrastructure project, you don't have to bring all those extra powers into it, but you can get the expedited process through it. And I don't think it's likely, and I don't think most Marylanders would want to give all those powers to the governor. Whoever that governor is, it's nothing against this governor. It's just a prudent way of doing it.
Okay, any additional questions for our two senators? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 1187. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr.
guys.
Chair. Thank you very much, committee.
Okay, we're going to go next. Before we get to our voting list, we're going to bring Senator Elfreth up. Oh yeah, absolutely. Senator Gallion.
Since now the bill hearing's over, would it be prudent to go ahead and bring this up for a vote at this point, since we're on such a tight time crunch?
I'm a little uncomfortable without.
We did that
having
with some
any-
legislation earlier.
I
this session.
understand those were like, what was the one we did, the JJ Peters Scholarship? I mean, I think this is one we would like to, I think it's important to get some feedback. I think some questions raised about the governor's position, where the House crossfile. I'd hate to rush something without having some feedback from, again, the AG's office. No disrespect, but the 24-hour turnaround here on a bill of this magnitude, I think this is worthy of at least a weekend conversation, and maybe it's a Monday vote, but I don't want to rush this one out. I hope that makes some sense to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so as we've done, Senator Elfreth, if you want to come up, what we've done with some bills that have changed, since we heard them some time ago, yesterday we did it with the governor's bill on affordable housing before we take up the bill for a vote. And in this case, we are not, even though it's on the vote list, we're not going to vote this bill today, but I wanted to give Senator Elfreth an opportunity to outline the current posture of the bill with the amendments that she's going to be proffering. There's been a lot of conversation with the House, and hopefully we can get all, like we've done on all these bills, get all the issues out, concerns, questions. We can, I think that's been the point of all these bills, and that would include this piece of legislation. So, Elfreth, this is Senate Bill 783.
Yes.
And this is a bill that as a result of the task force on solar incentive task force to jumpstart the solar industry. But there are some moving parts, so I thought this was worthwhile. And then after Senator Elfreth does her thing, then we'll move to the voting list that we have in front of us. Okay, so the floor is yours, Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be okay if Evie from MEA joins me as well?
Oh, okay, yeah. Just hold on. We're gonna stop this is sort of an informal work
Yep.
group, so we're gonna let